Good morning, Heartache. So I have a few thoughts today. Um, First of all, I got triggered quite a bit yesterday because of the guy who owns the construction company had some old guy, in his 70s, in great shape, busting his ass, working with the young guys. And I asked, is that your father? They're Albanian. And yeah, that was a fantasy of mine that I would keep healthy and work and play and get to know my son's family and his future. My son didn't just, this bullshit didn't just rob me of my past. It's rewritten my past, but it's also rewritten the fantasies that I had for my future. And those were not out, those were going to happen. We were going to play music, we were going to work. I don't know who robbed me. Did heroin rob me? Did Forrest rob me? Did I rob me? Did the dealers rob me? Does it have anything to do with me? I was talking to the Guatemalan guys, and in Guatemala, they have just discovered an entire city, many pyramids, one larger in mass than Giza. And they did this by this technology that shoots the ground, but is able to penetrate the organic material. So you just see the buildings and the topography. And it's insane. Go look on YouTube. Mirador. And of course, the lead archaeologist on that project, his son, works alongside him. I knew I couldn't do that with my dad, because my dad was insane. He was brilliant and driven, but for stupid, ideological, bent, twisted, little fascism in there. It's fucked up. I guess it's like what you come up with. If you come up with really stupid cultural ideas and you don't read and expand your mind, because the literature is out there, it's like year one philosophy course. You can break free of most of your mental chains. What a waste of human time. Okay, here are my thoughts. The epidemic that we talk about, the opioid epidemic, it's not like a flu epidemic, like the flu that killed more people in the last days of World War I than the war itself did, than the hostilities did. It must have been really weird to have your family get sick and then to lose 3 of them in a weekend. Horribly, too. I know there's no God. FYI. I know it. Just because of shit like that, it's really doesn't take a genius. So it's a human-made epidemic. It's adult-driven, The kid dealers, these like young dealer kids that I saw recently, they're not they're not bringing this stuff in. They're being groomed. They have the wrong ethos, but they were groomed probably from kids through their culture. The adults make these decisions, adult males, no doubt. The supply chain all the way from Afghanistan, which is where 90% of the heroin comes from, all the way down through the countries where they export it through, Pakistan, Iran. And gets here, it's adult hands, adult male hands, men who are going for the easy money. And always the same excuse, like, well, it's the only thing, or what do you expect me to do, or, it's bullshit. Jihad. Heroin is Islamic jihad. At least according to every source that you can derive, the Taliban takes the money. They initially did not accept it, but now and over the last few years, heroin has come back, and they figure it's okay, Islamically, because it kills infidels. And yet, I'm sure, and I in the documentary I just recently watched, countries like Iran and Pakistan and Afghanistan are having their own epidemic. And I predict that it'll be worse than this one, because those people have nothing to fucking do. There's no books. There's no culture that isn't this shitty honor culture. I hate honor cultures. It is jihad, and it disgusts me. And then my last word is the housing projects. Housing projects, because the drugs, at least in Manhattan or New York City, and I would have to think it continues on down the eastern seaboard and probably across the country, but let's just say what I observe with my own eyes, it's the housing projects where people are dealing the heroin openly, or at least out on the street. It's African American, primarily, at least here, and nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about that this little insular, semi-autonomous culture that exists inside housing projects is the feet, is being groomed. You get your smartest kids and stick them out there, make them believe that this is somehow okay. So they're being taught a certain way, they're being raised a certain way, and they're being used a certain way. And to be sure, some of the drug dealers I see are just these fat, out of shape, middle-aged assholes. And they deal out of their cars, and those are both men and women. So it's a mixture, but they've been probably doing it for a long time. They have a clientele if they're not dead yet. I don't believe a lot of the housing project dealers use it, because they'd be dead on the street. So it's a pretty amazing little business right now, because what you got is humans deciding, adult males deciding to kill Westerners. Westerners have an appetite for unreality. Other adults justify it, rationalize it as a worthy enterprise, and the death machine just grinds on, and it's disgusting. And none of this has anything to do with the, in a way, the kids that are dying. It's all like the machinery that's in place. I think adults, this is the thing, the adult responsibility for this is just an utter failure, where we're like, we'll talk about a kid, like I heard the funeral director say, well, Forrest made a mistake, which one of us didn't make a mistake when we were his age? And we start to excuse this as like, I lost one because of his youth, and he didn't grow up, and he didn't learn, or whatever the fuck. That is irrelevant in some way. It's the machinery is so strong that as soon as these kids go, I want to try something, it is full force available to you. And if we don't hold adults accountable, Jihad accountable, your own, and when I say adults, I mean like people like you and me. Instead of having, taking these pills that the doctors prescribe, throw them out. Don't take them. Don't accept them. You probably don't need them. Most of our ailments come from neglect. Just self-neglect. You don't work out. You have horrible thoughts, toxic environments, and shitty diets. It's like, I saw it happen to my father. I see it happen to everybody. It's just like, you smoke, you treat yourself like shit, and what do you expect? Yeah, I'm hurting. My back hurts. I'm going to take these pills. It's a failure to understand, to respect what we are. We're animals. We're animals. Anyway, that's it. Heroine. It is Islamic Jihad, and it takes advantage of the weak characters in our culture. People that have, who self-neglect themselves, have low thresholds for pain, and are bored. And then your kids pick up on it. Because I've heard way too many stories of kids starting from, pulling out the pills from the medicine cabinets, and that's the first thing they start to sell or take. And then the housing projects, that's the last thing. When can we confront that? That's where it's being sold out of. That's where dealers are finding cover, because they're like separate societies. Please don't go into these housing projects. They leave it alone. I take pictures of the drug dealers, and the more I'll get, the more I'll post. Post them in the local newspaper. Send them anonymously. Whatever you got to do. But the kids in those projects, they're just getting used, taught the wrong shit, turned into drug dealers, and they'll end up dead or in prison. So calling it an epidemic is unsatisfying to me. How about calling it an adult-caused jihad program? And it's not just jihad. It's not just those people trying to kill these people. It's because they're gonna die over there too. But we just don't deal with the real thing. We don't deal with this real process, which is our weaknesses personally, jihad, and the fact that narcotics are being distributed to our cultures, to all of our culture in America through this housing project culture. And to what end? So that these assholes on the corner can make money, and then they're driving their money up to the people that have supplied them, and so on and so on. It's disgusting. And you notice that, like, it doesn't, by the time it gets to the junkie, and then the junkie is going through their stupid drama, for a long time I didn't blame anybody but Forrest and myself. Because he knew not to mess with this garbage, this filth. But he did, and he found it. It's easy to find. Just drive by a housing project, and jihad is in full flower. Jihad killed my son.